Welcome everyone to the Eagle Mom Squad podcast. So today we're going to be talking about educating your kids in science. We have our wonderful Eagle Mom Squad members, Julie.
Hello.
Hey. And Anne.
Hello.
And Katie.
Hi, everybody.
I'm Edie, and I've educated two kids through now to college. One is majoring in science, and the other is majoring in liberal arts. But we have some wonderful resources and viewpoints to share with you today to hopefully make your journey, wherever it is, more smooth and give you confidence that you can really make the choices you'd like to make in educating your kids. By the way, this recording is being made on Zoom because we're in 2021 and still being separated by the pandemic. So pardon us for any glitches, but we're doing our best to get the message out that you can have lots of options in homeschooling. If you're at home doing public school and private school even, on your computers and sort of supervising your kids, we can help there too. Julie, you want to say a few words about our website and resources?
Oh, well, our website, our Eagle Mom Squad website has lots of resources that you can use for homeschooling your kids at all different ages. And I think we've even given some tips on what we've done as individual moms and what has worked for us, whether it's curriculum or styles of presenting the material. And of course, you can also find us on Facebook and Clouthub and Buzzsprout for our different podcasts and videos and blog posts. But I know that when I started homeschooling my kids, they were little. I had a third grader, a first grader, and a toddler, and science terrified me. So I just stood on the shoulders of giants, and I did what people who went before me said, and that was make it fun. Mm-hmm. And so regardless of what we have on our website regarding our resources, when you have elementary age children, make science fun. It has to be hands-on. It just has to be tactile. Not a whole lot of workbook. You can do some reading, a lot of fun reading you can get from the library, but most of it just needs to be hands-on learning. What do you guys think?
I would totally agree with that, Julie. I have 6 children, and they, I was a little overwhelmed in the beginning. How am I going to teach science to all these little kids? And I did enjoy making messes, so that was really good. That lended itself to a lot of hands-on science. I have a background in science myself, so I love doing dissections. We would go to the butcher shop, and I'd bring home different organs. We would dissect hearts and lungs and pig ears and basically any body parts that the butcher would give me. So we did things like that. We created things in the kitchen. We did hands-on chemistry things with at-home supplies. My kids were doing supervised explosions in the backyard.
I bet they love that.
Yeah, we tried to create a lot of wonder and excitement and joy in the whole experience with science. It wasn't until we got up into the high school level that we started getting a little more serious about, memorizing things and really doing more abstract science. But the lower grades, we had a blast. It was wonderful.
And we hope to, in this podcast, also create a sort of framework around which you can put those wonderful, wonder-filled experiments into, so you can sort of check mark your way through, am I covering everything? that worry that sometimes homeschoolers and public schoolers have. Are they going to be ready for college? And I think, Anne, you have a great perspective too on that bridge to college and to what they're going to need.
Yeah, with my son, we started homeschooling when he was in 5th grade, so he already had a passion for natural science. So I pretty much could have told you, he's studying forest management now, has his associate in wildlife tech. So I could have told you at a young age what he was doing. Part of the reason I started homeschooling was because he was losing his interest in science. He was starting to kind of go the way of the crowd, and that I knew that wasn't him. And so part of the reason for homeschooling was to keep that curiosity going, that science curiosity. My father was a chemistry teacher, so we had a lot of backyard explosions throughout the year. But with my son being wanting natural science, I focused less on he did a regular curriculum, but the main ways that he learned were supplementing through real life experiences from junior high on, getting really involved in outside organizations, getting involved in projects. By the time he was hitting high school, giving his own programs, running his own projects. He's been doing land management on a property since he was a freshman in high school. He continues to manage the property for Audubon. So for him, I knew early on, watching him going to camps, that he learned best when he was standing in the middle of the woods. And he's kind of continued on. So our focus was really quality ways to supplement his education with outside resources, outside projects, a lot of networking with people in the field.
Right.
So that, he went off to college already knowing a lot of people, already having had college internships in high school. So that's one of the things I would encourage. We were very specialized in what he liked to do.
Right.
So if you see your child has a passion, find other people outside who can help you bring out that passion and real life skills and interests.
I love that. And I think, Julie, you and I on past podcasts and in other resources on our website emphasize that when you're working with your child to get them to have the things they need as an adult, you're really working organically as a parent. And homeschooling really complements that, but it's something that you could do in public school or private school as well. You take the person that they are and try to give them the best resources and materials and environment to make those things bloom. Did your kids have a special interest in science, Julie? Or
I wouldn't say specifically science, but when you mentioned the public schools, I think we should address public school kids a little bit here, because I think as a parent, you can ask the question, hey, Johnny, hey, Susie, what are you learning in, your science class? And take an interest in what they're doing, and then think about how you can supplement it. Take them to the science museum. Look up, home experiments that you can do with the things that you already have in your house. Watch a video or two online about some of the experiments, and then go and recreate them. You don't need to just be a homeschooler to add to your child's sense of wonder when it comes to science. And I have to stress again, in hearing about elementary level kids sitting in front of computers all day long for their Zoom classes, that they're getting Zoom fatigue. We all know that. And mom and dads can definitely take the reins and give these kids the hands-on experiences that they desperately need in the younger levels.
just give them an eye break for one thing.
Oh, yeah. But that sense of wonder is so critical. I mean, even as a homeschooler, you can destroy it if you just spend too much time on books, or workbooks, work pages, I think it's that real world experience, getting out there and doing things like Katie was mentioning, the explosions and the messes. And, I don't know how many times we learned about science just by doing some baking or cooking or, I could go on and on, so I won't. Go ahead.
Well, my next question was going to be, as parents, some of us are scientists and some of us not. What do you think the value of science training is for the non-scientists?
You mean for the parent or for the...
Well, what I mean is, as a parent, you don't really know whether your child is going to go into a science or a tech field. But why would you study science anyway? What would you say to your child who's not particularly interested in that? Why do I need to do this, Mom? How would you answer that?
I think that one of our jobs as educators is to expose our children to as many different fields as possible, because they don't know what their interest is. They don't their world was so small, and it's, you know, for my kids, it was our family and our small social circle. There was a very sheltered view of what's out there. And so I've always felt the importance of exposing them to as many things as possible. And if they learn, I don't like that, that's just as valuable as saying, I like that, you know.
Sure.
So when they get to college, now you're saying, well, you want to major in something, and they have no idea what they want. So if they can eliminate things, that's just as valuable. But we have science in our lives all around us. I mean, not just in the actual experiment kind of thing, like Julie was saying with baking and gardening. We're in science outside nature. The whole scientific method is an important way of thinking, and we must train the kids how to ask questions and not be afraid to seek an answer, you know, and that might be something simple like, what's the best type of flour to use in this cake I'm using? Should I use all-purpose? Should I use bread flour? Should I use whole wheat flour? Should I use rice flour? They have to learn how to take risks and do experiments, not be afraid of failure, and then learn how to analyze the outcome, you know, and get them to draw a conclusion to the little experiment that they've done. So I think scientific thinking is important for life in general, no matter what you do.
I second that.
Analytical type of thinking, you know. Sorry?
Yeah, I second that. And I was wondering, Anne, as a lawyer, your background also in critical thinking, any science training should certainly focus on that.
Yeah, I think the critical thinking is important. I also think that, you know, taking it a little bit differently, because I knew my son was into science, I had to approach the questions of why study art, why study English,
Right.
especially given that he's also dyslexic. So, you know, that was also, so we kind of approached it from everything's related point of view. And one thing I noticed when he started hanging out with real life organizations, real life scientists, many of them had hobbies or that were art related. Most of them were either nature photographers or artists, trained artists. Many of them wrote outdoor blogs, or, you know, so there was such interweaving of science and art. You know, again, I kind of used what his interests were. So when we studied history, which is my big thing, I always made sure that we also studied the scientists of the period. And when we studied Pennsylvania history, because it's so rich in conservation history, we studied all the conservationists, the Pennsylvania conservation movements. When he read literature, because, you know, I knew he didn't enjoy reading, especially, you know, and anything fiction he didn't really enjoy. But, you know, he read a lot of the hardcore conservation writings and essays. And so it interwove it made it more enjoyable for him. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we would get creative. I remember this one time he had a short story he had to read. It was like a horror short story, and it was about a mad scientist. So instead of having him just write a summary or report about the short story, I had him write up what happened in the short story as a lab report of this doctor, this mad scientist writing up his lab report. So, you know, there are ways, so if you have a child that's not interested in science, but maybe in art, interweave things like the Hudson River artists, interweave that science. Honestly, it's all related.
Yeah, and you know, there's a bit of appreciation of the wonder of the human being when it comes to homeschooling your children and parenting in general, where you're just enjoying that kind of creative journey together. On the other hand, there are lots of challenges. And Julie and Katie, I wonder, being moms of more than one or two, as Anne and I are, how do you balance all of these things that you'd love to do? You know, you could explode things in the backyard every day, but they need to have all of the other curriculum, the arts and phys ed. How do you balance all of that?
Oh, goodness. I don't know. I just did. I don't even know I could say it was balanced. When my kids were little, my style of homeschooling was to make sure that they knew their math facts, that they could read, and that they could write, as in hold a pencil, penmanship. And then we did a lot of reading of history, and like I said earlier, the field trips. And I don't know that we were just living. Everything that we did was involved with our homeschool. I guess also my boys in particular were participants in the Boy Scouts of America, and they had merit badges and little things, belt loop things that they had to accomplish. And a lot of that included science. A good amount of my science curriculum got taken care of in Boy Scout requirements. I don't know. I mean, I had 3, but, 2 were very close together, and then one was very, far apart from the others. So it wasn't that big of a deal. I think Katie would be a better person to talk about balancing everything with her 6 kids.
Yeah, my kids thankfully are very close in age. So we had 6 kids in 6 years. So, and their levels were all over the place. So I was able to group them largely through elementary school and the first half of middle school. So we did a lot of unit studies, and I would tailor the activities. The older kids maybe had to write, the younger kids had to do little crafts. And of course, the level of understanding varied between them, but they all were exposed and they all worked together. So we did like nature studies. We did, one year we did an alphabet garden. We grew a plant for every letter of the alphabet, and then we created a book to show pictures and information about the plants. Then we also did co-ops. We loved working with other families, and we found that coming together and kind of moms helping each other, maybe break the kids out into subsets of ages, that was really lots of fun. So like with Edie and her kids, we did a whole unit on the cell one time. And another year we did a chemistry co-op together. We did an organic chemistry co-op together. So those had tons of activities, small snippets of instruction, very little textbook, but some basic information that they kind of use as a springboard then to do the activities and play the games and things. And those were great ways to do it with the big family. We like strength in numbers, so.
Right.
I forgot about the little co-ops that we did. And one thing I used too was lap books.
Oh yeah.
And like the unit studies, we did lap books, and they are a lot of fun, and they could be used with a variety of ages. And another thing I did was, it used to be in our newspaper, every week in the summertime, they would give challenges on a specific topic. And I remember one year it was butterflies, and they wanted us to learn about butterflies throughout the year. And then at the end of the summer, if you turned in all your work, you got free passes to Hershey Park, I think it was.
Nice.
But anyway, it really spurred us on to learning a lot about butterflies. I'm just using that as an example. But lap booking, like Katie said, little homeschool support groups, doing little classes. Those were all fun ways to get social and the science taken care of for moms and kids.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I would also, one of the things that worked really well for us were citizen science projects. Things such as the backyard bird count, which is every February. That was a weekend thing. There's a thing called, a project called the Feeder Watch, which goes from November, I think, till March. And data gets sent into Cornell, and you watch birds twice a week from your bird feeder, but it's real data. My son did it we started right away when we started homeschooling. So after about 5 years of data, he found himself presenting a program to some homeschool organizations up in the northern tier. And he pulled out some of his data to add to this program, and discovered that there were changes in the data based upon changes in the habitat, which he hadn't realized before. So those were all things. And when he started doing the project Feeder Watch, he didn't like art. So he got into photography and photographing the birds that were there. So that was a way to bring, and that helped with the bird ID. Julie said about butterflies, one thing he got into then later was Monarch Watch, which is tagging butterflies. And you follow data, and every now and then you have a butterfly that you discover, while migrating, was recaught 2 weeks later in South Carolina or somewhere. It's pretty exciting. But there are a lot of different citizen science that you could do as a family, or, as your child can do. Interweave the writing, interweave the art, and because it's actual data that's used. What I have discovered is some of this data, if kids want a real life experience, the data is used by other organizations, especially if they have cutbacks in their funding. They'll use data that people submit. So it's real life experience.
And you're having an impact on your world, which is really dramatic for a child.
Mm-hmm.
I think we can put these things in the description of this podcast. And also you can find them on our resources page on our website, which we'll also put down in the description. But Anne, how would people find citizen science projects?
There are a lot of different ways. If you try to follow your state parks, a lot of times the state parks, or in Pennsylvania, DCNR, for the natural resources, will advertise citizen science projects. For birding, Cornell, the ornithological lab up there is key for citizen science. You can, even just Google different citizen science projects. I would also recommend for, looking at your different colleges. Colleges offer different programs for kids, summer programs. Now with COVID, some of the programs have been canceled or changed around. But see what college programs there are out there, or also Julia said about the newspaper. I notice locally for the Gettysburg Times, there is a professor from Gettysburg College who runs the planetarium, who has public programs and writes periodic columns. So there are a lot of different ways through your state parks, your colleges. I would also recommend, one of the things that we discovered is just getting involved in organizations. You will find mentors for your child. And this isn't just science. It's easy with science, but if you find a mentor for your child, they will open up new opportunities, just a whole different style and way of learning for your child. That's my recommendation.
That sounds great. And thinking of resources, Katie, all that exploding, and did you come up with most of those ideas out of your head, or?
Oh, over the years, the kids would be given a book, like dangerous activities for boys, and then there'd be little instructions in there. We had a book on building catapults. So one year for a science homeschool, like an end of the year showcase event, we built this. Well, my husband helped them build this huge catapult that was, the arm I think was 6 feet long. So there's tons of information out there, but I certainly can add to the list. So like Dangerous Book for Boys, Backyard Ballistics is another book. So there's lots of things. I was going to add to the idea, though, of additional outside activities, and that is robotics and engineering clubs. We've been involved in this now for 4 years, and my youngest son, especially, my daughter was in it as well. She did it more because I forced her to, but I wanted both of them to be part of the whole process of a long-term project. I think for robotics, there's a wonderful effort in what I call patient problem solving. And so, there's different programs out there, but they're presented with a game theme, and they have to build a robot that can play the game. And this takes place over months, so they have to work slowly, diligently. They experience failure, they experience success, they build a camaraderie together, they make friends, they have to give a presentation, they have to share the information with people in the public. again, like Ann said, it gets the kids out there interacting with strangers, promoting the activity, promoting their team, raising money. So, and they have to build like a team business plan. So it's a really encompassing activity beyond just the engineering part of it. That's another way of implementing science. You know, hard science is kind of like the base knowledge, and then from that information you can then turn it into engineering devices and things and objects and stuff like that. So it kind of bridges from science into engineering.
What is the name of that program, Katie?
So we're using a program called FIRST, which stands for Inspiration and Recognition of Science and Technology. And they have programs from preschool through high school. And it's gradually gets more complex as you go. And just a fantastic organization that's been doing this for 25 years now. And anybody can start a team. I didn't know anything about robotics, but I thought it's a way to take the interest in technology, the interest in the computer, and make it something valuable out of it, and a learning thing out of it. So it's been a great experience for our kids. And the ones who started in the club, many of them have stayed the course for 4 years and they still love it. So it seems to be appealing to the kids.
There are also many school districts have robotics teams, and so that might be an option people could check into, whether or not that's they're open to homeschoolers joining in. For the natural sciences, Envirothon is one of the things that homeschoolers can join in with their school district. But it's interesting you were saying about engineering. I was just looking at something in the local area. In Dillsburg has a place called Catapult. That's a make space. I guess they have the equipment. It's an engineering company that has the equipment that you can go in, and it was interesting because it was a whole different thing. We didn't do engineering, but there seems to be a growing emphasis on robotics and engineering, and this was a place where kids could go in and get access to equipment, get some ability to get some mentoring, and even I saw that they even had internships open just from 16 on. So you could possibility of getting internships. So it looks like a growing field for homeschoolers and traditional education.
Yeah, that's interesting. I hadn't heard of that one, but that's,
yeah,
I'm not surprised. Harrisburg University in Harrisburg, they offer outstanding summer camps throughout the summer. They're week-long programs, all kinds of different topics in science. I think they're like all-day programs. We haven't actually done one yet, but every year I look at the list and I'm thinking, oh, I want to get Elijah, or I want to get my kids into this. So it's, there's a lot of opportunities out there when you start digging around and looking.
And they don't always have to be costly opportunities. I like the idea of these maker spaces having the equipment there for you. And the unit studies are often given online. You can access those ideas for unit studies online or through books. I would put in a plug for Ellen McHenry's basement workshop. I was just asking my daughter, who's a senior, what helped her, and she said, well, I had this great training through Ellen McHenry, and then she wanted to recommend doing AP science classes. And that's something that you can even qualify your own homeschool AP course if you go through the College Board approval system, which is not that involved. You can actually take one of their syllabuses and copy that for your course, and it qualifies for AP credit if the student passes the AP test with a 5 or lower. Sometimes they get college credit for that. But she felt really prepared, and I think one more thing I'd like to put in, the math that is involved with science. As an artist, I'm a musician, I just had such wonder that it's not just a vague concept that you're learning in science, but when you put mathematical formulas to it, you can make predictions, you can understand it more fully, and you can come up with this technology through the math. So I think that might be a motivator for learning math too. Julie, do you think that's true? We went to you for math tutoring.
Yeah, I do think, I know one of the things I encounter when I do evaluations for families is the mother tends to be the primary educator of the homeschooled children, and the education of the child seems to be directed by what the mom feels comfortable with or does not feel comfortable with. But I just want to say to the parents out there who are their primary educators of the children that regardless if you feel comfortable with a subject or not, there's so many resources out there that you can access. You don't have to be an expert on math to make sure that your kid gets a solid math education. And math is incredibly important. I'm teaching algebra right now to some 8th and 9th graders, and the struggles with some basic concepts if they cannot master some basic foundational concepts, they really can't go much further in math, nor can they go much further in science. I mean, yeah, you can do biology, but it's going to be really hard for them to move further on in the physical sciences. What I mean by that is the chemistries and physics, if they don't have solid math skills down. So yeah, math's really critical
Right.
for going into the sciences. I do want to add a couple of things here to the outside sources that we had mentioned earlier. When I said something about Boy Scout merit badges, you can look online under just Google Boy Scout, or I guess it's now called Scouting, merit badges, and you can actually pull off the internet the different topics. Like I said earlier, they have lots of topics on there. They could be great for unit studies. They give the outline of what the child needs to learn and master for that topic, for that subject area. And those provide a great alternative to a workbook per se that you have to go out and purchase, any big stuff that you have to purchase. They're very, very reasonably priced, and it gives the parent a lot of freedom in how they tackle those subjects. And the other thing I want to say is that in the homeschool community, and I think pretty much at large in a lot of public and private schools, the idea of a science fair has gone out the window. And for 3 years, I created a local homeschool science fair, and I had about 15 participants each year, breaking it into the middle schoolers and the high schoolers, and it gave them an opportunity to research a project, do experiments, do presentations, and then get judged by outsiders who were experts in their field. And then they also got presents, or not presents, but awards for their work. And I think that is a critical area that's missing today in whether, like I said, whether it's homeschoolers or public schoolers or private schoolers. In our area, only one school participated in the regional science fair, and that was a private school. None of the public schools participated anymore, and that really disappointed me because that was a critical part of my upbringing, and I think it's something that's missing overall for elementary and high school level kids.
Yeah, that's a great point. And just to finish up here, I'd like to go around and just give our last bit of advice for everyone. I asked my husband to just make a list. He's a scientist trained in biology and physics, and I asked him to make a list of essential science focuses that you would want to make sure that your child knew before they graduated. Things like the periodic table and how it works, that kind of thing. And I'll put that in the description. And I wanted to just pass on one more thing from my senior in college who's graduating in infectious disease and immunology degree. She says, you can do it, to all the homeschoolers who would like to go into a science field. Anne, do you have some advice?
I guess my advice is a little bit different with the sciences. I actually sit on advisory board for the local school district. and have done some judging. Julia said about judging of science. I've done some judging with the school district. And my recommendation is if you have a child, especially that's into science, they still need to know the basics, not only science, but they need to learn how to write. That's what I hear from a lot of teachers. That's what I hear from business people. Kids are coming out of school not knowing how to write. How to write, how to have a conversation, how to show up on time. You know, no matter what your topic is, you know, again, everything's related. If you love your science, know how to write about it, you know how to talk about it, these basic skills.
That's great. Katie, do you have some parting advice?
Well, I would piggyback on Anne's comments. I have been teaching some science classes through an online school, and we are using an approach called mastery. You learn the ideas, you master them, and then you retain them through the repetition and take a core amount of information and just keep working with it, building on it, and throughout the whole year, instead of just getting exposed to it in chapter 1 and then never seeing it again, you kind of cycle back through it and build on it throughout the course. And one of the methods we use is essay. Everything is written. All these responses are essays, and that really forces the kids to put into coherent sentences concepts in scientific concepts. It forces them to be clear in their speech, to know whether the word is a verb, whether the word is an adjective, whether it's a noun. You can regurgitate a scientific term, but until you have to really explain it in full sentences, it's a different ballgame. So I agree, communicating your ideas. It's true in the robotics. We have to communicate our discoveries. We have to communicate constantly. And if you can have wonderful ideas, but if you can't communicate them, they kind of just fizzle away. There's very little left.
Right. And I found a magic quality in education, and that is if the student needs to teach, and what you're saying about writing is really thinking through something, and if you add the dynamic of you're instructing someone else, you organize those thoughts in a way that helps you thoroughly learn them. So that might be a magic ingredient to throw into your homeschool mix.
Yes, that is the idea of mastery. If you can get to the level of understanding so that you can teach it or explain it or thoroughly communicate it back, that's one indication of mastery. So I agree with you. Teaching is a wonderful pinnacle of understanding.
Right. And Julie, as a Eagle Mom Squad founder, do you want to put forth any parting advice for everyone?
I think everybody here gave great advice. I agree with all of it. And I would just say to parents out there who are being their child's primary educator, jump right in, embrace it, live it. Don't compartmentalize everything. It's a whole lifestyle, and you just have to embrace it. It's a part of parenting. You want to raise your kids to be strong members of society, intellectually, in all the different areas that you want your child to be strong. And, they need to, you need to model that. And so you need to model that can-do spirit for them, and science, whether you're good at it or bad at it, fake it till you make it. Embrace it, learn along with them. There's nothing wrong with saying, you know what, I don't really remember a whole lot from my biology class, so this is going to be really exciting. We're going to learn together. So, don't worry about it. I as Katie teaches, I teach as well. I've taught chemistry, and I'm doing physics now this year. And I've told my students, I said, look, I haven't had physics for 30 years. I'm learning just like you are. I just stay a little bit ahead of them, of course, so I can talk to the subject. But I've learned more being a homeschool parent than I did when I was in, school myself, 40 years ago. So anyway, yes, I agree with your daughter. You can do it.
Right. All right. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us today. And if you want more information about homeschooling or supplementing your public or private schooling, details are in the descriptions below. Our website at eaglemomsquad.com. All right. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.